This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. We begin with President Trump signing an executive order today on police reforms. This after weeks of widespread protests following the killing of George Floyd at the hands of a white Minneapolis police officer on Memorial Day. Trump's executive order would give incentives to police departments for adopting best practices on use of force, doing away with chokeholds, and focusing on less lethal weapons to help prevent deadly interactions. Under the order, departments will share information about officers' misconduct and use social workers in nonviolent situations. It will also provide federal funding to help officers with resources for people dealing with homelessness, mental illness, and substance abuse. The president addressed reporters at a White House Rose Garden briefing Tuesday afternoon, saying the order will restore and renew communities.
When you remove the police, you hurt those who have the least the most. Nobody needs a strong, trustworthy police force more than those who live in distressed areas, and nobody is more opposed to the small number of bad police officers more than the overwhelming number of really good and great police officers. But in order to make real progress on public safety, we have to break old patterns of failure.
The president also said he's committed to working with Congress, that is, on additional measures. Republicans are expected to release a bill on police reform Wednesday. Adding fuel to the fire, there's new information that the Atlanta police officer who shot and killed Rayshard Brooks had been reprimanded about use of force. Dale Hurd reports.
New information today that the Atlanta police officer who shot and killed Rayshard Brooks had received a written reprimand in 2017 over use of force involving a firearm. This is the newly released 911 call that led up to the fatal shooting of the 27-year-old Brooks in a Wendy's parking lot.
He's in the middle of my drive-thru, ma'am.
Does he appear to have any weapons from where you can see him?
No, I think he's intoxicated.
Here's surveillance and police body cam footage.
You're gonna get tased! You're gonna get tased! Stop!
As Brooks is running away, you see him point the stun gun he took from officers at Garrett Rolfe, who then fired 3 shots. Brooks later died at the hospital. And that set off protest overnight in Atlanta. Atlanta's mayor has ordered a list of new police procedures.
I'm also requiring de-escalation generally and specifically prior to the use of deadly force.
I thought it was I'm not going to compare things, but I thought it was a terrible situation.
The incident comes as the nation has been engulfed in protest over the killing of George Floyd. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
In the aftermath of the senseless murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, a move of God is happening there right now. Christians and non-believers are coming together at the location of Floyd's memorial site. The site was once flooded with riots and chaos, but the area has now turned into a place of peace. There is worship, praise, baptisms, and even healings, and it was all started by Dr. Charles and Pastor Lindsay Karuku. They told CBN's The Prayer Link program that they felt a call from God to be the catalyst to see interracial healing begin.
There's a lot of peace in that area where George Floyd's memorial is. It's been declared as a sacred and holy ground. And so we're seeing worship and salvation and people, really true reconciliation between people of all different colors.
Wow.
And I understand people are getting baptized and healings are even taking place there. Tell us about that.
We had a man who was in the military, deaf on one ear for 15 years. God instantly opened his deaf ear. We've had people coming and saying, I'm suicidal, can someone help me? And we pray for them, they get delivered. We baptize them in water. We're getting people saved, giving their hearts to Christ. And a lot of people hugging each other, crying over the shoulders of interracial healing and reconciliation that is taking place there.
Praise God for all of that. You can hear more of this interview tonight on the Prayer Link at 6:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. In other news, COVID cases continue to rise around the world, surpassing 8 million diagnoses. And today, New Zealand is no longer free from the coronavirus after celebrating 0 cases in the country 3 weeks ago. Health officials said they found 2 new cases, which they said were imported from recent travel to the United Kingdom. New Zealand's Prime Minister said it is no surprise, as the government had anticipated more virus cases, particularly in international arrivals.
Obviously, at the border, there is a reason that we have a very rigorous process. It's exactly because at the moment COVID is surging worldwide. New Zealand may be in very particular circumstances. The rest of the world is not, which is why our border closures and our quarantining process and all of the standards we have remain so important.
Meanwhile, researchers in England say they have the first evidence that a drug can improve COVID-19 survival. Results released today showed the steroid called dexamethasone reduced deaths by up to 1/3 in severely ill hospitalized patients. The drug was given either orally or through an IV. While millions have stayed at home to avoid catching the coronavirus, lingering restrictions and fear may have increased the chance of dying from cancer for some. CBN's medical reporter Lori Johnson explains why.
New data shows a staggering 90% of cancer screenings were canceled this year because of COVID-19 stay-at-home orders. Hundreds of thousands of Americans missed the tests that can detect cancers of the colon, breast, cervix, and more, often before the patient even has any symptoms.
Over time, cancer grows and can spread throughout the body. That's why early detection and treatment improves the patient's chance of survival. Missed or delayed screenings could prove catastrophic.
That ends up delaying their opportunity, if they are going to be diagnosed with cancer, to have the benefits of that early detection. And so my sense is that there will be more severe cancer diagnoses.
Now that many COVID restrictions are easing and patients can get the screenings and other checkups, ongoing fear is a problem. Some worry about catching the virus at the doctor's office or hospital, although healthcare facilities take steps to minimize that risk by requiring masks, clean hands, fewer people in waiting rooms, and more.
I would love to be able to see churches really stepping up to the plate, encouraging people to be able to go and get their regular cancer screening done. We needed to be able to have folks that were walking with them through this.
Karen Tripp leads a nationwide ministry of church volunteers trained to help cancer patients draw closer to Christ. She expects a spike in the months to come.
There's going to be a lot of people that we know in our communities that are going to be coping with cancer that are going to need to see how Christ can help them through that. When we look at the studies, there's no question that the impact of faith on a person's physical health is enormous.
Turns out it's not just cancer screenings. A new survey shows nearly half of all Americans report they or a family member skipped or delayed other medical and dental care because of the pandemic. And as a result, 1 in 10 of them say that person's condition worsened. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Dramatic action demonstrating rising tensions on the Korean peninsula today. North Korea blew up a liaison office building just north of the heavily armed border with the South today in a theatrical display of anger. No South Koreans were working there, and the demolition is largely symbolic, but it still makes it difficult for South Korea to continue normal relations with the North. And joining us now with more is our senior international correspondent, George Thomas. George, what message is North Korea sending with this incident? Does this affect the U.S. and North Korea relationship?
Well, Mark, as you mentioned it was symbolic. I mean, it was a dramatic moment. Of course, when you blow up the liaison office that sits right across one of the most dangerous, heavily armed, fortified borders in the whole world, of course, it's dramatic. But listen, you got to paint the picture. Let me paint the picture. For almost a year, U.S.-North Korean talks have basically stalled. It has gone nowhere. And the North Koreans have spent the last year trying to prod their neighbors to the south. Listen, can you get the Americans back to the negotiating table? Look, we've had all kinds of things happen in the last year, and especially in the last 3-4 months. So the North Koreans are getting frustrated. They're frustrated that the sanctions are continuing, the penalties, economic, military, all kinds of other sanctions against the country are continuing to hurt the so-called hermit kingdom. And so this was a symbolic gesture. I think it's interesting that Kim Jong-un's sister is the one who ordered the demolition. She had warned a couple of days ago that something very sad and dramatic was going to happen. I think it's interesting that her stature continues to rise within the Kim family. But this was a symbolic gesture. I wouldn't read too much into it. It's dramatic, of course, but I think it's, again, the North Koreans, Mark, are famous for brinkmanship. They take you to the edge, the precipice of potential World War III, and then they back off. And in the process, they try to extract more relief, more, things in return for their brinkmanship. And this is exactly what happened. But look, it still is, continues to make this part of the world a very, very dangerous place.
And George, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs called for peace between the two Koreas today. How will China and other countries in the region be impacted if the relations continue to fall?
Yeah, fantastic question, Mark. I mean, the reality is that China plays an enormous role in the region between North and South Korea and also with the United States. China and North Korea, they're number one trading partners. North Korea is China's number one trading partner. They get all of their goods and services from their neighbors. So China holds the trump card. They really do. And if they wanted peace, if they wanted to prod both sides to get the North Koreans to give up their nuclear weapons, their nuclear ambitions, they absolutely do. But they're playing also, a checkerboard game, right? A chess game where they also want to position themselves. They don't want to reveal all their cards because they know they can continue to flex their political military might on the Korean Peninsula, in the Asian subcontinent as a whole. So it's always been about the Chinese. If the Chinese wanted peace on the Korean Peninsula, they could absolutely get the North and the South, the North and the North Korea and the Americans to the negotiating table, and they can play a vital role. But they continue to continue to play in the shadows, always constantly creating this sort of tension in the region, not really wanting to intervene, but at the same time having the opportunity to play that card for their own strategic and national interests.
And George, quickly, speaking of China, NATO last week declared China a strategic threat. What's going on there?
Yeah, well, basically, the NATO general sounded the alarm, not just to America, but also to Europe, that China has the second largest budget when it comes to spending on military. I mean, it's the reality. China is an emerging superpower. There's no doubt about it. They are spending so much money on long-range missile capability, all kinds of cyber war capabilities, military capabilities. There is no doubt about it. And with China being a major player on the global scene, their influence, not just, keep in mind, not just in Europe, not just in Southeast Asia, but also in parts of Africa. We've documented it on CBN News, parts of Africa, Latin America, the Asian subcontinent. Their influence, both from a political as well as an economic role, continues to expand dramatically, and the world should take note of it.
All right, our senior international correspondent, George Thomas. Thank you, George. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir.
And we'll be right back.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain. Get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
The Supreme Court will not get into the debate over policing right now after rejecting cases that would have allowed the justices to look again at when police can be held financially responsible for wrongdoing. The court turned away more than half a dozen cases involving the legal doctrine known as qualified immunity, which the court itself created more than 50 years ago. It makes it nearly impossible to recover damages even when civil rights are violated. John Jessup explains.
Anger over the haunting images of the death of George Floyd sparked a worldwide movement.
Got all four!
But there's another movement, though little known, gaining traction, marked not by images, but by two words many have never heard: qualified immunity.
If I understand correctly, it effectively acts as a shield.
That's exactly right. And that's why we call qualified immunity an unlawful shield, because it is a shield for public officials who have committed constitutional violations to escape accountability for their actions.
When police use excessive force that may violate a person's rights, that person can try to recover damages by claiming a violation of civil rights. But increasingly, those claims are not even given their day in court because of the doctrine of qualified immunity and its widespread application in civil cases seeking police accountability. The law's origin comes from the Enforcement Act of 1871, designed to protect recently freed slaves after the Civil War. Over the years, a section of the law protecting public officials in the course of their work evolved into today's version of qualified immunity, a doctrine created by the Supreme Court. It essentially provides a shield of liability against civil lawsuits so long as the public official's conduct does not violate clearly established law.
The way it works in practice is that courts will require would-be civil rights plaintiffs to find a prior case already decided in their jurisdiction where someone else's rights were violated in essentially the same way.
And given no two cases are exactly the same,
qualified immunity routinely enables public officials, especially members of law enforcement, to get away with egregious misconduct just because they happen to be the first ones to commit that exact kind of misconduct.
For example, after being cleared of any wrongdoing, a Cleveland man filed a lawsuit alleging he was punched in the neck and jailed by police who never identified themselves but suspected he was breaking into his own apartment. A judge ruled because of qualified immunity, neither the police nor the city could be sued. And an appeals court last year ruled 2 California police officers who allegedly stole over $220,000 while executing a warrant also couldn't be sued, simply because there's no legal precedent in that part of California.
What should happen when a
Schweikert isn't the only one drawing attention to the legal challenge. Last month, a Reuters investigation reviewed some 500 cases over 15 years and found a trend. Courts denying victims the right to challenge violations of their constitutional rights, making it harder to win future cases against the police. In speaking with law enforcement, I found a willingness to reconsider the unintended effects of qualified immunity, followed by a hesitation to end the principle, seen as essential so police can carry out their daily duties without the constant fear of lawsuits. Captain Sonia Pruitt has served nearly 30 years with the Montgomery County, Maryland Police Department.
Black officers play a really vital role in policing. It is a noble profession.
As the head of the National Black Police Association, she says it's time to re-examine qualified immunity for law enforcement.
We would ask that any of the parameters surrounding qualified immunity be examined because it could be a way for officers to feel like that they will get more leniency if they commit an act, a violation of misconduct in the line of duty.
Schweikert believes it not only thwarts justice, but works against the very men and women it's designed to protect.
I think that this doctrine is doing a tremendous disservice to members of law enforcement because it is depriving them of the public trust and credibility that they need to do their job safely and effectively.
And momentum for change is building. Among protesters honoring George Floyd, both liberal and conservative justices saying it's time to review the court's own solidified principle, and lawmakers introducing legislation to revoke the provision for gun-carrying officers in an effort to combat excessive force and police brutality. It's a rare issue of consensus across ideological lines seen recently on criminal justice reform. Nicole Porter witnessed the power of the faith community when she worked to advance the First Step Act.
In my work at the state level, faith communities are key in representing a base of constituents who are supportive of criminal justice reform and talking about restorative justice and other alternatives of punishment.
Many agree among the ways to honor George Floyd is to fix the broken system before it gets worse.
My hope is that if we are able to address that now and make a simple but massive change to eliminate this doctrine, I hope that will offer some small measure of redemption for the death of George Floyd and so many other people like him.
What's his name? George Floyd!
John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
I am Regents First ROTC graduate student.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
how'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
For years, high school students have served their communities by adopting senior citizens. Now we're seeing the reverse thanks to the coronavirus. We've seen how this pandemic put a damper on family celebrations, from birthdays to marriages to senior class milestones like proms and graduation ceremonies. To help lift up members of the class of 2020, residents at the senior living community Westminster Canterbury on Chesapeake Bay reached out with advice and lessons learned from the past.
You are there to learn. Go to every class. I never cut a class while I was in college.
Resident and former teacher Neola Waller chatted with Cox High School senior Alexandria Pisano as part of the program Seniors Celebrating Seniors. By using a birdsong tablet, the video communication tool developed by Westminster Canterbury, the residents safely spoke with the graduating seniors. What kind of advice did you give her?
Well, having taught seniors for 30 years, I have lots of advice, and your time is too short for me to tell it all. But I had some items. For one, I said, just remember, when you go to college, you will be learning something, and your parents will expect you to graduate with a marketable skill.
Pisano plans to attend Old Dominion University to major in neonatal nursing. She describes Waller, who's 91 years young, as an amazing woman.
As a first-generation college student, it was really hard to kind of figure out what I was expecting to get into. So her adopting me really made me kind of get inspiration on what to expect and how to pursue my career. She gave me really great advice.
And Pisano says what made her relationship with Waller even more special was the fact that Waller taught at Cox High School for 30 years.
I still keep in touch with a lot of my students.
It was just amazing to speak to her, and we had a great relationship, and honestly, I feel like we're going to have a forever relationship. I'm going to come back from school and visit her just to talk to her about advice on what I should do in school, because I know I'm going to be lost.
She has a wonderful smile, which I think will be very healing and accepting of her patients. I've loved talking with you.
I know, you gave me such great advice.
Oh, it's great to see. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Have a great day.